this video, I'm going to show you this absolutely insane arpeggio sequence that we're going to sweep pick on the guitar. It actually comes from Bach's Partita number 3, the final part of it, the Giga part. And it's just a little excerpt of it. So without further ado, let's get into it so I can show you what it sounds like, and then I'll show you to play it, and we'll break it down a little bit more from there. 1, 2, 3, 4. There you go. There is the arpeggio sequence. I'll play it one more time just for fun. Ready? 2, 3, 4. As you can see, that sounds totally insane, and it's super cool. Uses a whole bunch of arpeggios in a row. So let's go ahead and break it down. So first of all, I would just want to go over the general idea that's happening here, and then we'll talk more about the specifics. So as you can see here on the left of the screen, it is in the key of E major. Now, I didn't write a key signature down on the tabs here because sometimes actually the key signature is harder for people to keep track of. So you see all of the notes spelled out there with the accidental. So the key of E major. So the first chord that we're actually playing here is this. So first of all, the general idea in this sequence is it's actually playing an arpeggio going up. There's your arpeggio. And then on the way down, it's actually just playing scale notes. So now scale. So you hear that this sounds like an arpeggio. And then you got the scale going downwards, which then leads into the next arpeggio, which to me is the coolest part of this. So first of all, you could look at all of the notes in this individually, but actually all of the arpeggios are really straightforward in this, and you almost kind of just need to look at the first note that you're playing in the arpeggio, and then it'll tell you, oh yeah, go upwards from there. It's this arpeggio. So actually, the first arpeggio is going to be the 7 chord in the key of E major, which is D sharp half diminished. And I know that because it's an arpeggio, and it's starting from a D sharp note here on the 6th fret of the 5th string. And then the next arpeggio after that is going to actually be the 3 chord in the key of E major, which is G sharp minor 7. Because we're going to start an arpeggio from this G sharp. There's your G sharp minor 7. And then again, just like I said before, scale going downwards. And then we're going to have a C sharp minor 7 arpeggio, which is the 6th chord in the key of E major. So now we're on the 2nd measure on the tab, you see there? And then scale going downward. Then we're going to go to F sharp minor 7. Now we're in the 2nd half of that 2nd measure. Same thing. That's such a cool thing about this is it's always arpeggio up, scale down. Arpeggio up, scale down. So now we're getting to the 3rd bar, the 2nd line there in the tab. And this is starting from a B, so it's actually a B7 arpeggio, which then goes down the scale. And then finally, that's when the sequence gets broken a little bit, and we're going to have a little bit of extra stuff here. So first of all, let's just recap what we had. We had D sharp half diminished. Then we had G sharp minor 7. Then we had C sharp minor 7. Then we had F sharp minor 7. And then B dominant 7. And then we're going to play now. We're on the 2nd half of the 3rd bar. So we're going to have a B. And then we just go down the scale actually from here. Just straight up going down a scale. This is all just E major scale right here. 7th fret of the E string, then 10th fret of the 2nd string, then 9th fret of the 2nd string, 7th fret of the 2nd string, and then 9th fret of the third string. And then we're going to have the end of the sequence or the end of the excerpt. So here, this part is really cool too, because it ends up having a scale which kind of changes directions. It goes down briefly and then goes back up. That's one thing you see in a lot of Bach pieces that makes him sound so cool, is that when he does play scales, he's always kind of like changing directions a little bit, mixing up the scales and the arpeggios and the directions of the scales and the directions of the arpeggios. Even though in this particular instance, you're going to see this is the first change of direction in arpeggio. So you have the scale, and then the last three notes of the excerpt are literally just a B major triad, actually, which is the 5 chord in the key. So you see there, when I'm looking at something like this, I want to think about it in this way that I just outlined. I don't want to just learn the notes, but I want to understand what actual chords are being played in the sequence. And that way it actually makes it a lot easier to memorize. And it makes it even easier to memorize than that if you're someone who's already familiar with all of the arpeggios in the given key that you're working in. So that's why I'm so big on make sure that you practice and know your arpeggios in all 12 keys, both your triad arpeggios and actually your 7th chord arpeggios as well. Okay, so now we just went over sort of the nuts and bolts of what's going on here, the actual chord sequence. We figured out it's an arpeggio going up and a scale going down for the most part. But now how we're going to play this. So the beginning, first of all, we just play this one note, and then we end up getting into that arpeggio sequence. But for almost all of these, what's going to happen is you're going to sweep pick on the way up. Now, what is sweep picking? Sweep picking, for those of you who don't know, it's when we just pick in the same direction the entire time if we can. But oftentimes too, you're going to see here, sweeping has to get mixed with legato playing, i.e. hammer-ons and pull-offs, so that we can keep our right hand as effortless as possible. It's funny, people think of sweep picking as this really hard thing, and it is hard at first, but once you learn it, the cool thing about it is that it makes stuff way easier to play than if you didn't know how to sweep pick and you had to alternate pick this whole entire thing. So check out this first arpeggio from the beginning. We have a down pick, then a hammer-on with the pinky, and then 2 more down picks. And when you do this, make sure that you don't think of each down pick as a separate movement. Don't think like you're loading up and doing a down pick. Rather, it's just one continuous movement with maybe a slight pause to wait for that hammer-on. I'm just thinking really just pushing my finger down, pushing my pick down. So if you don't know what a sweep pick yet, if I were you, I would just practice this first little teensy weensy part of the excerpt, and then that's going to make it a lot easier afterwards to play all the rest of the arpeggios in the sequence. And then you see here on the way down, we do have a couple of alternate picks here on the 9th fret of the 4th string and then the 7th fret of the 4th string. And then you pull off into the first note of the next arpeggio. So we pull off into that G sharp there, which now all of a sudden is the second half of the first bar. And then we sweep again. Again, mixing in a hammer on there. So we pulled off into that first note, and then we had a hammer on, and then 2 down picks. So that's something right there that will also really help you is, hey, I don't always have to actually pick the first note of the arpeggio if I'm leading into it on a note from the same string. And you see, even just doing that by itself, I mean, sounds really cool. So let's go into the next one. So this part is kind of challenging because we came down to this note here where now we're going to the second bar again, but we need to skip all the way down with our pinky here to the 9th fret of the 6th string. And then start another arpeggio. So this one, strictly because of the skip, I put an upstroke on that note because it's just going to be really hard to not only skip these strings, but then also hit it with a downstroke. So then right after that downstroke, though, you hit right after that upstroke, you hit 2 downstrokes in a row for the sweep. So sweeps are not always perfectly going to be the exact same direction the entire time. But again, it's the idea that let's make sure, if we can and it's practical, keep the pick moving the same direction. And then again, you notice that pull off. We're trying to make it so that actually our pick doesn't have to do any more work than it should. And then here, the F sharp minor 7 chord, you down, 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 up. So a lot of times, if I want to go down the scale like that in this sequence, I will actually pick that note so that I get a little bit more oomph on the notes thereafter instead of having to play it legato. It doesn't sound quite as aggressive as if I pick it. And then same thing on the B7 chord, actually, same picking pattern. Down, 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 up, down, pull off. So there in the F sharp minor 7 chord and the B7 chord, this is the exact same picking pattern. And then finally, let's talk about this very end. So this is a really good, actually, legato sequence. So we're going to go down, and then down, up, pull off. And then an up again on this E note here in the 9th fret of the 3rd strings. And then we're going to play a downstroke right after that. And then we're going to have this really cool legato sequence, which is a whole bunch of pull-offs and hammer-ons. So this is the last bar, for those of you who might be lost, the last bar of the example. So we downpick the first note, we pull off to the second note, hammer on to the third note, and hammer on to the fourth note too. So we only had to pick one note, but we played 4 notes afterwards. And then finally down and then up, up. So sometimes we got to sweep like that too. Same thing like what we did before. We started with an up pick on that C sharp minor, and then we went 2 downs. Well, now we started with a down pick and went 2 ups because we're sweeping downwards instead, down the arpeggio. So I hope that this helps. What you should do now that you've learned this sequence is, first of all, practice it with a metronome. Practice it with a metronome, and the time signature is 6/8. So it's a really cool, unique thing too, like that. You don't see too many things that are in 6/8. A lot of times, most music is in 4/4. Practice this to get your chops better, and then try to apply some of these ideas to other arpeggios that you know. Like even if you're playing the arpeggios in the key of C major. Right? You can actually now start to improvise with this idea and say, oh, wait a second. This is a cool thing that I can do. I can play an arpeggio up and then play a scale down. You can apply that as long as you know some of your arpeggios and your different keys. You can actually use that idea yourself. Right? You can use this in your own improvisation, and that's one of the big takeaways that I always want you to understand whenever I'm showing you how to play a specific example. It's not just about learning the example itself, but it's about understanding it and then being able to actually use it in your own playing. That's where you actually get the most out of it, when you make something of your own using the concepts that are in the thing that we're learning. Now all of a sudden, I'm actually improvising and making my own type of thing, and go, wait a second, that's kind of inspired by Bach. And now I was actually able to change my own improvising based on a piece of music that I learned. So if you want to learn all of the fundamentals so that you can actually understand what's going on in any single given piece of music that you learn, including this awesome, insane Bach excerpt, make sure you head on over to Jamsville.com right now and pick up your copy of the Jamsville GPS Fretboard Fundamentals course. This is going to be the best course that you've ever taken to mastering the guitar fretboard and being able to play any single key, any single chord that you want to anywhere on the guitar fretboard. That is one of the most important things. If you want to be the best guitarist you possibly can be, you got to know all of these fundamentals, and you need to know them in every key, and you need to know them everywhere on the guitar fretboard. Because if you don't, then you got holes in your playing, and when you got holes in your playing, there's going to be things that you're trying to avoid when you're playing solos. Oh, I can't solo in this area of the guitar fretboard because I don't know what's going on over there. No, you don't want to have any of that. So if you're actually serious about improving and getting your guitar playing to the highest level that you can get it to, then make sure you head on over to jamsville.com right now. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because even if you just want free stuff, then this is the place to get it, right? Subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the notification bell, or else you might as well not subscribe, because you're not going to get notified unless you hit that bell icon. And until next time, listen, learn, and jam.